Hi folks, there'll be a few things discussed in this video, so let's start with this point. Trump is now being given the credit, all credit pretty much, of bringing peace in Israel and Palestine. So it made me think, okay, well first of all, Trump didn't bring the peace. No. They've been at this for 2 years. Their own people have been sort of hammering for peace. The whole world has been on one side or another really pushy for this conflict to cease. And the pressure on both sides has been immense. So Trump comes in at the end when they've already arranged peace, and he comes in for the dealing with that and basically claims credit. Typical Trump. But again, the book of Daniel describes the Antichrist as bringing peace in Israel, a 7-year peace. So, let's see what happens with this, shall we? So it's going to be interesting. Well, as I say, if Trump didn't have the nature of the Antichrist, it wouldn't be worth mentioning. But the fact he does, and then they're giving him the credit for bringing peace in Israel, then okay, interesting. Only interesting. It's not anything other right now. So it is an interesting point. So next point. Something I realised last night. I'm looking for a wife. If God's going to give me a wife, he's going to give me a wife, someone who is quick-witted, someone who is sharp in their sense of humour, someone who's going to make people laugh. So 15 or so years ago, when I wrote down about wife, when I asked God about wife at that point in time, my understanding of a wife at that point in time would have been a good little Christian wife. That's why what I wrote down did actually describe Kylie Bevan. Right? Okay. That's fine. But now I understand that a good little Christian wife, that's the last thing I'd ever want. That really is. I'd rather get someone who has no knowledge of God at all as a wife than marry someone who's a good little Christian. Especially now, the way that good little Christians think, because a good little Christian isn't about looking good to God, it's about looking good to the world. And so therefore that's why they do the worldly things. That's why they go to the world. When someone has offended them, that's why they go to cancel culture. They don't go to the word of God. I want a wife who understands that being offended is bloody stupid. Taking offence about something is stupid. I don't want a wife. I could never have a wife who, if she gets offended, she asks a pastor to ban that person from the services that she goes to. Where she blocks that person on Facebook. No. I want a wife who, if somebody says something stupid, she goes to the Word of God. She goes to God, not the Word of God, she goes to God. And God tells her how to respond. And then it's more likely the person who said something stupid that she could have taken offence to is going to block her. Because if she says truth, that person will then get offended and block her. Good. That's fine. The conversation has ended, but she didn't do it. She wasn't the one that went to the world and the world system to do that. If I had a wife that was doing that, I'd have to continuously pull her aside and say, what the heck are you doing? We're supposed to be walking as one. If I'm saying to people, you can't do that, and you're doing it. So that's why the truth of the matter is, no. There is no way, shape or form, as far as I can tell, that it would be possible that Kylie Bevan and I could ever be together as husband and wife. Ever. With whatever would happen in her situation with the person she's married to now. Even if that relationship does not work. No. No. Because, yeah, I'm looking for someone who is steps and steps and steps and steps and steps above. No, I know that may be impossible to find. Well, for me it will be. For God. Yeah. No, that's the point. I want it absolutely understood that I was designed for her and she was designed for me. That there was no accident. There was no, doing according to Paul. And again, why on earth do people ever listen to Paul? Paul was not married. They listen to Paul. Paul basically says, for the sake of basically lust, if you can't actually deal with lust, and if temptation is too big, get married. What? Obviously, Paul didn't imagine what we would see in today. OnlyFans and all this binking stuff, did he? He didn't imagine that. On such a scale, lust is everywhere. For goodness sake, if because of lust we should be married, how many people am I married to now? It's an incredibly stupid reason. But again, we have to understand, maybe Paul didn't actually say that. It's written down, but maybe that's a translation. He may have given he would have spoken to the church in Hebrew. Now, it's quite possible it was translated poorly, and so we get that. But people go by that. Don't go to God. If you see someone, you think, I'm attracted to that person, I want to have sex with that person, oh, therefore I should get married to them. Go to God. Right? Yeah. No, generally speaking, no, it won't be that. It won't be that. Because that is ridiculously stupid, especially when you're in a church system that basically says divorce is evil. No, it isn't. Let no one separate those that God has joined together. Well, if God didn't join you together, then separate. Right? Again, this is something that people don't understand. If the Word of God says you cannot separate those that are joined together by God, well, that means that those that aren't joined together by God can be separated. Right? Most relationships with people in the church are exactly the same as it is for people in the world. They've chosen badly. Because most of the people, a lot of the people that are married in church were married before they knew God. Right? Now, I know the Word of God says, if you're married to someone who is not a believer, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. But that's at a time, again, that was written at a time when there was a brand new belief coming in. Yeah, that's not us. We're not at that time, are we, really? So therefore, go to God about all things. As I said, sometimes it's a case you could be in a relationship which is troublesome. It doesn't mean you've got a divorce. It just means maybe you've got to separate. Maybe you've got a divorce in the short term and remarry later once you've dealt with the things that were causing the problems in the relationship. Yeah, there's no problem with that at all. Sometimes people need a break, and to have a break is a wise move. But yeah, I don't want to be in a relationship where any of that is the case. So yeah, I want to be in a position where I don't get offended by the time if I do get married, then that would be the case. And I want her to be in the same position. Because it's important for us to both go forward with God and to be more of his nature rather than the nature of this world, which is quite infectious even to people in church. So yeah, You take care. God bless. I'll speak to you soon. Be blessed and be a blessing. Bye.